In the heart of 19th-century Pennsylvania, a chilling pattern emerged over 25 years, centered on the grand mansion of wealthy industrialist Jeremiah Hartwell. 5 different women, each intelligent, healthy, and brimming with life, walked through its doors as his bride. Yet, one by one, every single wife suffered the exact same horrifying fate, a complete and shattering mental breakdown within months of occupying the opulent master bedroom suite. The sequence was so precise, so unerringly methodical, that when the truth finally clawed its way into the light in 1835, it would send a tremor of shock not just through Millbrook County, but across the entire state of Pennsylvania. What authorities uncovered wasn't a tragic coincidence or a whispered family curse, but something infinitely more sinister. It was a deliberate, cold-blooded conspiracy that had been systematically destroying women's minds for decades. Tonight, we peel back the layers of deception to uncover the terrifying truth about what really happened in that mansion, and how one man drove 5 wives to madness using methods so calculated, so diabolical, that even today they chill the blood to its very core. Before we delve deeper into the harrowing story of Jeremiah Hartwell and his tragic wives, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments what state you're listening from. You might be unpleasantly surprised to discover just how close these dark events unfolded to your own home. The saga that would leave an indelible stain on Pennsylvania's history began in the prosperous town of Millbrook, nestled in the coal-rich valleys southwest of Pittsburgh. By 1820, the relentless churn of the Industrial Revolution had transformed this once quiet farming community into a bustling hub of commerce. The air, thick with the smoke belching from factories lining the Monongahela River, was the very scent of progress. On the surrounding hills, newly wealthy families erected grand mansions as monuments to their newfound fortunes. Jeremiah Hartwell arrived in Millbrook in 1821, an ambitious young man of 25, his eyes burning with a keen sense for opportunity. Unlike many industrialists of his era who were born into their wealth, Hartwell had clawed his way up from modest beginnings in rural Ohio. The son of a blacksmith, Jeremiah had learned early that success demanded not only intelligence but also a vein of ruthless determination. Within a mere 5 years, he had established the Hartwell Iron Works, specializing in the production of railroad components desperately needed as the young nation forged its path westward. The Hartwell Mansion, completed in 1828, stood as a towering testament to his meteoric rise. Perched high on Beacon Hill, its windows gazing down upon the town like unblinking eyes, the 3-story Georgian structure boasted 42 rooms, floors of imported marble that echoed with every footstep, and manicured gardens that stretched for acres. The townsfolk marveled at its grandeur, whispering in particular about the master bedroom suite that occupied the entire east wing of the 2nd floor. Hartwell had spared no expense. Its walls were adorned with hand-painted wallpaper from France, a massive 4-poster bed was carved from rich Pennsylvania cherrywood, and tall, arched windows offered breathtaking panoramic views of the valley below. What made Hartwell's success even more remarkable was his personal magnetism. Standing over 6 feet tall with piercing blue eyes and prematurely silver hair that lent him an air of distinction, he possessed a commanding presence that made both business rivals and social peers take notice. Local society matrons vied for his attendance at their gatherings, and the unmarried daughters of prominent families found themselves inexplicably drawn to his sophisticated charm and the undeniable allure of his wealth. Hartwell, it seemed, understood precisely how to make each person feel as though they were the most important individual in the room. This potent combination of immense wealth, disarming charm, and elevated social position made Jeremiah Hartwell the most eligible bachelor in all of western Pennsylvania. When he announced his engagement to Margaret Dunlap, the bright, 19-year-old daughter of a respected judge, the entire community celebrated what appeared to be a perfect, storybook match. The wedding, held in October 1829, was described by the Millbrook Gazette as the social event of the decade, with over 300 guests attending the elaborate ceremony at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. Margaret Hartwell's transformation began slowly, almost imperceptibly, in the damp chill of the spring following her wedding. At first, the changes seemed like nothing more than the natural adjustments of a young bride adapting to the immense responsibilities of her new life. She had always been celebrated for her quick wit and engaging conversation, the life of any social gathering. But now, she appeared distracted during visits, her gaze drifting to stare out of windows with a peculiar, unnerving intensity that made her guests uncomfortable. Her sister, Catherine Dunlap, later recalled in a private letter that Margaret had begun speaking about the house as though it were a living entity, as if it were watching her. She would stop mid-conversation and turn toward empty doorways, Catherine wrote, her pen scratching out her fear, as if someone had called her name. When I asked what she heard, she would smile in that strange, distant way and say, "Just the house settling, dear sister. Old houses have their own language, you know." By summer, Margaret's behavior had become noticeably erratic. She began refusing to sleep in any room other than the master bedroom, claiming with a frantic edge to her voice that the house felt wrong when she wasn't in her proper place. The household staff, initially charmed by their new mistress's gentle nature, grew increasingly uneasy as Margaret developed what they privately called the watching habit. She would position herself at the bedroom windows for hours on end, not looking out at the lush gardens or the town below, but staring intently at her own reflection in the glass, moving her head slightly from side to side as if studying a stranger from different angles. The breaking point arrived on a humid, oppressive evening in August 1830. The Hartwells were hosting a dinner party for several prominent Pittsburgh businessmen when Margaret suddenly stood up in the middle of the main course. She walked to the dining room's large, gilded mirror and began having an animated conversation with her own reflection. The guests watched in stunned, horrified silence as she gestured emphatically, her face contorting as if she were arguing with the image in the glass, occasionally letting out a high-pitched, unfamiliar laugh that echoed chillingly in the silent room. She kept asking her why she looked so tired, recalled Thomas Peyton, one of the dinner guests, in his journal. But the most unsettling part was that she seemed to be waiting for answers, pausing as if the reflection was speaking back to her. When Mr. Hartwell gently tried to guide her away from the mirror, she became agitated and insisted that she wasn't finished talking yet. That night, according to the later testimony of Sarah Quinn, the head housekeeper, Margaret was found at 3 a.m, standing in the master bedroom, completely naked, methodically tearing the exquisite French wallpaper down strip by strip. When a startled Sarah entered the room, Margaret turned with a serene, almost beatific smile and explained, "I need to see what's underneath." The walls, when fully exposed, revealed nothing but standard plaster and wooden laths. But Margaret nodded with a deep satisfaction, as if she had uncovered some crucial, terrible secret. Dr. Harrison Henley, the family physician, was summoned the following morning. His examination revealed a physically healthy 20-year-old woman who appeared to be suffering from what he termed severe nervous exhaustion, complicated by obsessive melancholia. In his notes, which would later become crucial pieces of evidence, Dr. Henley wrote, "Mrs. Hartwell demonstrates an unusual fixation with mirrors and reflective surfaces, coupled with an insistence that her reflection is somehow separate from herself. Most disturbing is her absolute certainty that this other self provides her with information about the house and its history." Within 2 weeks, Margaret's condition had deteriorated to the point where she required constant supervision. She had become convinced that mirrors throughout the mansion contained cryptic messages that only she could interpret, and she spent her days moving from reflection to reflection, carrying on detailed conversations with what she called the other Margarets. When family members, desperate and frightened, tried to cover the mirrors, she became violently agitated, scratching at the cloth coverings until her fingernails bled. The final, tragic incident occurred on September 15, 1830. Margaret somehow managed to gather every mirror, every piece of polished silver, and every reflective surface in the mansion into the master bedroom. She arranged them in a complex, ritualistic pattern around the room, then spent the entire night in what the housekeeper described as a conference with her other selves. By morning, she had lost the ability to recognize anyone, including her own husband, and spoke only to the reflections, which she insisted were her real family. Dr. Henley, after consulting with colleagues in Philadelphia, made the difficult recommendation that Margaret be committed to the Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane. On a gray October morning, as autumn leaves swirled like lost souls around the Hartwell mansion, Margaret was led away in a closed carriage, still calling over her shoulder to tell the reflections, "I'll be back soon." She would spend the remaining 43 years of her life in that institution, never recovering her sanity, and never ceasing to search for mirrors in her stark, restricted room. The commitment of Margaret Hartwell sent shockwaves through Millbrook's social elite, but the community's response revealed the complex and often cruel attitudes toward mental illness that characterized the 1830s. While some whispered of hereditary madness or hidden moral failings, most of the town's prominent families rallied around Jeremiah, casting him as a tragic figure whose promising marriage had been destroyed by forces beyond his control. The prevailing medical wisdom of the era attributed female mental illness to a variety of causes, from excessive reading to a disruption of natural feminine roles. Dr. Henley's official report, submitted to the county authorities, cited Margaret's condition as likely resulting from overstimulation of the nervous system due to the sudden elevation in social position and domestic responsibilities. This explanation satisfied most observers, as it aligned with common beliefs about the delicate, fragile nature of the female constitution. For 3 years following Margaret's commitment, Jeremiah Hartwell lived as a reclusive widower, meticulously maintaining his business interests but shunning all social gatherings. The master bedroom was sealed, its contents draped in white sheets like ghosts, and Jeremiah moved to a smaller, more Spartan room on the 3rd floor. The household staff, reduced to just the essential positions, reported that their employer spent most evenings locked in his study, poring over medical texts and corresponding with various physicians about his wife's tragic condition. During this period, Hartwell became obsessed with understanding what he called the science of mental affliction. He accumulated an extensive library on topics ranging from phrenology to the latest European theories about nervous disorders. His personal journals, discovered decades later, reveal a man seemingly tormented by his wife's fate, desperately seeking rational explanations for her descent into madness. In 1833, Jeremiah received word that Margaret had died in the asylum, her final years marked by a progressive physical deterioration that accompanied her mental decline. The funeral was a small, private affair attended only by immediate family members. Margaret was buried in the Hartwell family plot in Millbrook Cemetery, her gravestone bearing only her name, dates, and the poignant inscription, "Beloved wife, at peace." The tragedy seemed to mark the end of a dark chapter in Jeremiah's life. But those closest to him noticed that Margaret's death had changed him in subtle but profound ways. His business associates remarked that he had developed an almost obsessive attention to detail in his personal appearance and surroundings. He began requiring that all mirrors in his office be cleaned twice daily, and developed a habit of checking his reflection frequently during business meetings, as if to verify that he still appeared normal to others. More significantly, Hartwell had begun speaking about marriage again, but in terms that struck many as coldly analytical rather than romantic. He would discuss the requirements of a suitable wife with the same methodical approach he applied to business negotiations, creating what he chillingly called compatibility assessments for potential candidates. It was during this period that Hartwell met Elena Rodriguez, the 22-year-old daughter of a Spanish merchant who had recently established trading connections with Pittsburgh's growing industrial sector. Elena possessed a rare combination of sharp intelligence and striking beauty that immediately captured Hartwell's attention. But more importantly, she demonstrated what he described in his journal as exceptional mental resilience during their courtship conversations. Their engagement, announced in the spring of 1834, surprised many in Millbrook society who had assumed Hartwell would never remarry. But those who observed the couple together noted that Jeremiah seemed to have recovered his earlier charm and confidence. Elena, for her part, appeared genuinely happy and thrilled about becoming the mistress of the grand mansion on Beacon Hill. The wedding took place in June 1834, a more modest affair than Hartwell's first marriage, but still elegant enough to satisfy social expectations. As Elena moved into the mansion, Hartwell made a decision that would later seem deeply significant. He reopened the master bedroom suite, having it completely redecorated with new wallpaper, new furnishings, and most notably, an entirely new collection of ornate, glistening mirrors. Elena embraced her role as mistress of the Hartwell household with enthusiasm and grace. She was particularly proud of the master bedroom, often giving tours to visiting ladies and pointing out the beautiful mirrors that reflected light throughout the spacious suite. She seemed to take special pleasure in the large vanity mirror, where she would sit each morning and evening, brushing her long, dark hair while chatting happily with her personal maid about the day's activities. For the first 6 months of their marriage, Elena appeared to be thriving in her new life. She quickly became popular among the local social set, known for her warmth, intelligence, and genuine interest in others. Unlike Margaret, who had been somewhat shy and reserved, Elena possessed a natural confidence that made her an ideal hostess for Jeremiah's business entertaining. But by the cruel winter of 1834, those closest to Elena began to notice subtle, chilling changes in her demeanor and habits. The first signs of Elena's deterioration appeared in February 1835, manifesting in ways that were eerily, terrifyingly reminiscent of Margaret's early symptoms, though the household staff had been strictly instructed never to discuss the previous Mrs. Hartwell's illness with the new bride. Elena's personal maid, Maria Santos, a loyal young woman who had accompanied Elena from her father's household, kept detailed notes in her private diary about her mistress's changing behavior. These notes, discovered years later hidden like a forgotten secret in the mansion's attic, provide the most complete and horrifying record of Elena's gradual transformation. Senora Elena has begun spending much longer at her vanity, Maria wrote in early February. This morning she sat brushing her hair for nearly 2 hours, but she was not looking at herself. She was staring just to the left of her reflection, as if watching someone else in the mirror. When I asked if she needed anything, she said, "She is trying to tell me something important, Maria. I must listen carefully." By March, Elena had developed what she called mirror conversations, though she insisted they were different from simply talking to herself. According to Maria's accounts, Elena would position herself before various mirrors throughout the house and engage in what appeared to be dialogues, pausing to listen and then responding to unheard questions or comments. Unlike Margaret's agitated interactions with her reflection, Elena's conversation seemed pleasant and strangely informative. "She tells me things about the house that I never knew," Elena confided to Maria one afternoon, her voice filled with a strange excitement. "About the previous family who lived here, about the secrets hidden in the walls. She's very knowledgeable about household management, too. She's given me excellent advice about organizing the staff schedules." Dr. Henley, still serving as the family physician, was discreetly consulted when Elena's behavior became more pronounced. His private notes from this period reveal his growing alarm about what he termed a most troubling parallel to the previous Mrs. Hartwell's condition. However, Elena's symptoms differed in significant ways that made diagnosis difficult. While Margaret had become increasingly agitated and incoherent, Elena remained articulate, rational, and functional in all areas except for her bizarre relationship with mirrors. The turning point came in April 1835, when Elena announced to the household staff that she had learned something very important from her conversations with what she now called the mirror woman. She had discovered, she claimed, that the previous Mrs. Hartwell was still present in the house, trapped within the reflective surfaces and desperately trying to warn future wives about the truth hidden behind the walls. "Elena has become convinced that the mirrors contain some form of spiritual presence," Dr. Henley wrote to a colleague in Philadelphia. "However, unlike cases of religious mania or supernatural delusions I have encountered, she maintains perfect rationality in all other matters. She continues to manage the household efficiently, maintains normal social relationships, and shows no signs of the physical deterioration typically associated with mental illness. The obsession appears to be completely focused on reflective surfaces and what she believes they reveal about the house's history." Jeremiah's reaction to his second wife's developing condition was markedly different from his response to Margaret's illness. Rather than seeking immediate medical intervention, he began what he called careful observation and documentation of Elena's behavior. His journals from this period show a man trying to understand the apparent pattern emerging in his own household. "Elena's condition progresses along remarkably similar lines to Margaret's," he wrote with chilling detachment, "yet with enough variation to suggest that the underlying cause may be environmental rather than constitutional. Both women were perfectly healthy before residing in the master bedroom suite. Both developed fixations with mirrors within months of taking up residence. Both claimed to receive information from their reflections that they could not have known previously." This analytical approach led Hartwell to conduct what he called controlled experiments with Elena's condition. He began documenting exactly which mirrors triggered the strongest responses, at what times of day the conversations were most intense, and what specific information Elena claimed to receive from the reflections. His notes reveal a systematic, almost scientific attempt to understand whether external factors might be contributing to his wife's mental deterioration. The experiments yielded disturbing results. Elena's most intense episodes occurred in the master bedroom between sunset and midnight, always involving the same large vanity mirror that had been Margaret's primary focus. The conversations followed consistent patterns, with Elena asking questions about the house's history and receiving what she described as detailed answers about previous residents, hidden rooms, and secrets that must be preserved. Most unsettling was Elena's claim that the reflection had shown her the truth about what happened to the first wife. According to Elena, Margaret had not gone insane at all, but had discovered something so shocking about the house or its owner that she had been deliberately made to appear mentally ill to discredit her potential revelations. The mirror woman says Margaret knew too much, Elena told a terrified Maria in May 1835. She says that's why Margaret had to be sent away, to protect the important secret. But she also says Margaret is still trying to warn people through the mirrors, because the truth must eventually come out. By summer, Elena's behavior had become impossible to hide from Millbrook society. She had begun refusing to attend social gatherings unless the host's home contained mirrors where she could check with her advisor about appropriate conversation topics. When forced to attend mirror-free events, she became anxious and distracted, often excusing herself early to return home to her consultations. The situation reached a crisis point in August 1835, when Elena announced to Jeremiah that she had learned something that would change everything about their marriage and his very position in the community. Elena's revelation came on a stifling August evening, when the summer heat seemed to press against the mansion's windows like a living thing. Jeremiah found his wife in the master bedroom, seated before the vanity mirror. But this time she was not engaging in her usual animated conversations. Instead, she sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, staring at her reflection with an expression of profound, soul-deep sadness. "She has shown me the truth about this house," Elena said, her voice low and steady, without turning away from the mirror. "About what you do to the women who live in this room, Jeremiah. About why Margaret really went insane." According to Jeremiah's own journal entry from that evening, Elena then revealed a series of allegations that left him stunned. She claimed the mirror woman had shown her hidden passages within the walls, secret rooms where previous occupants had been kept against their will, and evidence of what she termed medical experiments conducted on unwilling subjects. Elena has constructed an elaborate fantasy involving secret chambers and clandestine activities, Jeremiah wrote, his penmanship betraying a hint of panic. She insists that Margaret discovered evidence of these alleged crimes and that her mental breakdown was artificially induced to silence her. Most disturbing is her claim that the mirrors somehow contain memories of these events, accessible only to women who spend enough time in the master bedroom. But Elena's accusations went far beyond vague conspiracy theories. She provided specific, chilling details about the mansion's construction, claiming the mirror woman had revealed the existence of hidden passages that connected the master bedroom to unused sections of the house. She described elaborate monitoring systems built into the walls. And most shocking of all, she alleged that Jeremiah had been systematically drugging his wives with substances designed to cause hallucinations and mental confusion. "The medicine you give me for my headaches," Elena confronted her husband that night, her voice trembling with dawning horror. "It's not medicine at all, is it? She showed me what it really does. How it makes women see things that aren't there. How it makes them appear insane to outside observers." Jeremiah's response to these accusations was swift and decisive. The next morning, he consulted with Dr. Henley about Elena's rapidly deteriorating mental condition, emphasizing the paranoid delusions and conspiracy theories that had replaced her earlier, more benign conversations with mirrors. Dr. Henley, already deeply concerned about the parallels to Margaret's case, agreed that Elena posed a potential danger to herself and others. "Mrs. Hartwell has developed a systematic delusional structure that mirrors the earlier case in disturbing ways," Dr. Henley noted. "Her insistence on hidden passages and secret activities suggests a complete break from reality, possibly exacerbated by the isolation and stress of managing a large household. I fear that without immediate intervention, she may progress to the violent episodes that characterized the final stages of the first Mrs. Hartwell's illness." But Elena was not ready to be quietly committed to an asylum. Over the next several days, she began what she called her investigation, systematically examining the mansion's walls for the hidden passages the mirror woman had described. She recruited a frightened but loyal Maria and several other household staff members, convincing them to help her search for loose panels, hollow spaces, and concealed doorways. The search yielded results that were both terrifying and validating. Behind a massive wardrobe in the master bedroom, Maria discovered a section of wall that sounded hollow when tapped. Further examination revealed a narrow panel that, when pressed, swung inward to reveal a cramped, dusty passage running between the walls. The passage, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, appeared to connect several rooms on the second floor and contained what Elena described with a shudder as observation ports, small, cleverly concealed holes that allowed someone in the passage to see into the bedrooms without being detected. The mirror woman was right, Elena told Maria, her voice a mixture of triumph and terror. The passages are real, just as she said they would be. If this part of her story is true, then everything else must be true as well. The discovery of the hidden passages sent shock waves through the household staff. But their impact on Jeremiah was even more profound. His journal entries from this period show a man struggling to maintain control of a situation that was spiraling far beyond his ability to manage. Elena's delusions have led to the discovery of architectural features I was unaware existed in my own home, he wrote, the lie stark on the page. The previous owner made no mention of these passages during the property transfer, and I can only assume they were constructed for purposes I cannot fathom. However, Elena's interpretation of their significance has become completely divorced from rational explanation. She now views every aspect of the house's design as evidence of a vast conspiracy directed against women in general, and my wives in particular. As word of Elena's discoveries and bizarre claims spread through Millbrook's insidious gossip networks, Jeremiah found himself facing questions he could not adequately answer. Why hadn't he known about the passages? What was their original purpose? And most importantly, how could he possibly explain the disturbing, undeniable coincidence that both of his wives had developed nearly identical forms of mental illness focused on the very same bedroom and the very same mirrors? The pressure intensified when Elena's father, alarmed by reports of his daughter's troubling behavior, arrived from Pittsburgh for an unannounced visit. Don Carlos Rodriguez was a shrewd, powerful businessman who had not built his trading empire by accepting convenient explanations for inconvenient problems. His initial meeting with Elena revealed a woman who appeared perfectly rational except for her unwavering insistence on the mirror woman's revelations. His subsequent conversation with Jeremiah raised questions that demanded immediate, irrefutable answers. My daughter claims she has discovered evidence of criminal activity in your household, Don Carlos informed Jeremiah during a tense evening meeting in the library. She also alleges that her mental condition is being artificially induced through medications you are administering without her knowledge. These are serious accusations, Mr. Hartwell, accusations that cannot be dismissed simply because they originate from someone whose sanity you have called into question. Just when we thought we'd seen it all, the horror in the Hartwell mansion intensifies. If this story is giving you chills, share this video with a friend who loves dark mysteries. Hit that like button to support our content. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's discover together what happens next, as the truth behind Five Wives' madness finally begins to emerge. The confrontation between Don Carlos and Jeremiah Hartwell took place in the mansion's library, a room notably devoid of mirrors or reflective surfaces. Elena had insisted on being present, claiming she needed to consult with her advisor before making any important decisions about her future. When informed that no mirrors were available in the library, she became agitated and requested that a hand mirror be brought to the meeting. I cannot discuss such important matters without her guidance, Elena insisted, her eyes wide with a desperate urgency. She knows things about this house and its history that no one else understands. She has been trying to protect me, just as she tried to protect Margaret. Don Carlos's reaction to his daughter's behavior was markedly different from the responses of previous observers. Rather than dismissing Elena's claims as delusional, he began asking specific, probing questions about the information she claimed to receive from the mirror woman. His methodical approach revealed shocking details that had never emerged during Dr. Henley's medical examinations. Tell me exactly what this mirror woman has revealed about the house's previous occupants, Don Carlos requested calmly. Elena's response provided a torrent of information that should have been impossible for her to know. She gave detailed descriptions of the mansion's original owner, specific architectural features that predated Jeremiah's ownership, and most disturbingly, accurate information about financial transactions and business dealings that had occurred long before her arrival in Millbrook. Jeremiah's attempts to explain away these revelations as coincidence or lucky guesses were completely undermined by Elena's continued, startling accuracy. She described business associates Jeremiah had never mentioned to her, detailed his private correspondence with investors, and most shocking of all, provided word-for-word accounts of conversations that had taken place in that very library years earlier, before she had ever set foot in the house. "The mirror woman sees everything that happens in this house," Elena explained, her voice gaining strength. "She has been watching and listening for years, accumulating information about all the residents and visitors. She knows about the secret business arrangements, the hidden financial records, the real reason Jeremiah chose this particular house for his residence." As Elena continued her revelations, a horrifying pattern emerged that transformed the investigation from a sad medical case into a grim criminal inquiry. The information she provided suggested that the Hartwell mansion had been deliberately chosen for its hidden passages and observation capabilities, that Jeremiah's business success was built upon information gathered through covert surveillance of his guests and competitors, and most damning of all, that his marriages were cold, strategic arrangements designed to provide cover for illicit activities that required the respectable veneer of domesticity. The evening's tense discussion was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Henley, summoned by Jeremiah to provide medical testimony about Elena's deteriorating condition. However, Don Carlos's commanding presence completely changed the dynamic of what Jeremiah had intended as a simple commitment hearing. Instead of a routine evaluation of Elena's mental state, the meeting became a blistering interrogation of the circumstances surrounding both wives' illnesses. "Dr. Henley," Don Carlos inquired, his voice sharp as steel, "in your professional medical opinion, what could cause two different women, with no previous history of mental illness, to develop nearly identical symptoms after residing in the exact same location?" Dr. Henley's response revealed the severe limitations of 1830s medical knowledge, but also his own growing, sickening suspicions about the case. "While such coincidences are highly unusual," he admitted, "they are not impossible. Environmental factors, including stress, isolation, and exposure to certain substances, could theoretically produce similar symptoms in different individuals. However, the specific focus on mirrors and the consistent reports of receiving information from reflections suggest either a shared, elaborate delusion, or what, doctor?" Don Carlos pressed, his eyes fixed on the physician. "Or the possibility that both women were exposed to similar environmental conditions that produced similar hallucinogenic effects, making them highly susceptible to suggestion and false memories while maintaining their ability to function normally in other areas." The implications of Dr. Henley's statement hung heavy and suffocating in the library's air. If Elena's condition was artificially induced, then Margaret's similar, tragic breakdown took on an entirely different, more monstrous meaning. Rather than tragic coincidences, the wives' mental illnesses became evidence of a systematic, evil manipulation designed to discredit women who had learned information that threatened Jeremiah's carefully constructed facade of respectability. As the evening wore on, Elena's behavior became increasingly erratic, but in ways that suggested sheer desperation rather than madness. She repeatedly requested access to a mirror, claiming she needed to verify important details before making any more serious accusations. When her requests were denied, she became agitated and began describing the contents of locked rooms and hidden compartments throughout the house, information that Jeremiah insisted she could not possibly possess. The crisis reached its climax when Elena suddenly stood up, her eyes blazing with a newfound clarity, and announced that the mirror woman had revealed the location of the evidence that will prove everything. She led the stunned group to the master bedroom, where she directed them to a section of wall behind the massive wardrobe. Following her frantic instructions, they discovered not only the hidden passage Maria had found earlier, but a concealed compartment containing a trove of documents and materials that would transform the entire investigation into a full-blown criminal prosecution. The documents hidden in that dark wall cavity told a story that was both more complex and more horrifying than Elena's mirror woman had ever suggested. As Don Carlos examined the papers by lamplight, The true scope of Jeremiah Hartwell's activities began to emerge from decades of careful, malevolent concealment. The first revelation came from a leather-bound ledger containing detailed records of surveillance activities conducted from the hidden passages. Entry after entry documented private conversations, personal secrets, and business negotiations that had been observed and recorded without the knowledge of the participants. The entries, written in Jeremiah's own distinctive, elegant handwriting, revealed how he had used this stolen information to manipulate business deals, blackmail competitors, and gain obscene advantages in financial negotiations. March 15, 1829, Senator Patterson discussed railroad route plans in drawing room with associates. Confirmed northern passage through Millbrook Valley. Adjusted investment portfolio accordingly. June 3, 1829, Judge Dunlap revealed his gambling debts to his wife in their bedroom conversation. Excellent leverage for upcoming court cases involving the iron works. But the surveillance activities were only the beginning. A second collection of papers, wrapped in oilcloth and tucked beneath loose floorboards, contained correspondence with a Dr. Heinrich Zimmermann, a German physician who had been conducting what he called experimental treatments for female hysteria at private institutions throughout Pennsylvania. Dr. Zimmermann's letters, written in a chilling mixture of English and German, described a systematic program designed to induce controlled mental instability in women who posed threats to their husbands' interests. The treatments involved carefully measured doses of various substances, including mercury compounds, laudanum derivatives, and plant extracts that produced vivid hallucinations and severe disorientation while leaving patients physically functional. The beauty of the treatment, Dr. Zimmermann wrote in one letter, his words a testament to pure evil, is that the subject retains enough rationality to appear normal in casual interactions, while developing specific obsessions and delusions that discredit any inconvenient truths they might reveal. The focus on mirrors is particularly effective, as it appears to be a natural feminine vanity taken to pathological extremes. Elena's accusations about being drugged were not paranoid delusions. They were horrifically accurate descriptions of a systematic poisoning program designed to drive her insane while maintaining the appearance of natural mental illness. The headache medicine Jeremiah had been providing contained carefully measured doses of substances that produced visual hallucinations, particularly when combined with the stress of isolation and the immense psychological pressure of living under constant surveillance. Margaret Hartwell had not suffered a tragic mental breakdown. She had been deliberately, slowly poisoned when she discovered evidence of Jeremiah's surveillance activities. Her increasingly erratic behavior was the direct result of drugs that made her see disturbing, accusatory images in mirrors, while her desperate attempts to communicate what she had learned were cruelly dismissed as the ravings of a madwoman. The most chilling discovery came from a final set of documents that revealed the true scope of Jeremiah's plans. He had not simply been conducting surveillance and blackmail from his mansion. He had been operating what amounted to a private intelligence network, using his social position and business connections to gather information for wealthy clients throughout Pennsylvania's political and business elite. The mansion's hidden passages weren't just spy holes, they were part of an elaborate system that included concealed recording devices, document copying facilities, and storage areas for compromising materials. Jeremiah's marriages weren't romantic relationships at all. They were cold business arrangements designed to provide him with respectable hostesses who could gather information at social events while remaining above suspicion. When Margaret discovered evidence of these activities, Jeremiah had used Dr. Zimmermann's experimental treatments to discredit and silence her. When Elena began asking similar questions, he had simply repeated the same horrifying process, confident that the medical establishment's ignorance about the true causes of her symptoms would protect him from any serious investigation. Don Carlos's reaction to these revelations was swift and decisive. As a successful businessman with political connections throughout western Pennsylvania, he understood immediately that the documents represented evidence of a criminal conspiracy on a massive scale. More importantly, he recognized that his daughter's life was in immediate mortal danger as long as she remained in Jeremiah's control. "Elena will be leaving this house tonight," he informed Jeremiah, his voice low and dangerous, "and she will be taking these documents with her as evidence for the authorities. Dr. Henley, I assume you will be revising your medical opinion regarding my daughter's condition in light of this new evidence." Dr. Henley's response revealed the profound ethical crisis facing a medical professional confronted with undeniable evidence that his patients had been systematically poisoned by the very people they trusted most. "If these documents are authentic," he said slowly, his face ashen, "then both Mrs. Margaret Hartwell and Mrs. Elena Hartwell were victims of deliberate poisoning designed to simulate mental illness. Mrs. Elena's condition should improve rapidly once the toxic substances are eliminated from her system." Jeremiah's reaction to the discovery was surprisingly calm, suggesting a man who had long prepared for the possibility of exposure. "The documents you found are forgeries," he claimed, his voice smooth as polished stone. "Planted by Elena during one of her delusional episodes. The correspondence with this alleged Dr. Zimmerman is a work of fiction, designed to support her paranoid fantasies about being poisoned. I'm afraid her mental condition has progressed to the point where she's capable of creating elaborate false evidence to support her delusions." But Don Carlos had anticipated this very defense. "Then you won't object to having the contents of these medicine bottles analyzed by independent chemists," he replied, producing the various vials and compounds Jeremiah had been administering to Elena. "And you certainly won't mind if we bring in handwriting experts to verify whether these documents were written by you or by someone else." The confrontation might have continued indefinitely, but it was interrupted by an unexpected, trembling voice from the bedroom doorway. Sarah Quinn, the head housekeeper who had served the Hartwell family for over a decade, stepped into the room, her face a mask of grim determination. "I can't stay silent any longer," she announced, her voice shaking but resolute. "I've watched 2 good women destroyed by what happens in this house, and I will not watch it happen to another. Mr. Rodriguez, your daughter is telling the truth about everything. I've seen the master administer the medicines. I've seen him using the passages to spy on guests. And I've seen what those treatments do to the ladies who live in this bedroom." Sarah's testimony provided the final, damning piece of evidence needed to corroborate Elena's claims. As the head housekeeper, she had access to all areas of the mansion and had observed Jeremiah's sinister activities over many years. More importantly, she had witnessed Margaret's deterioration firsthand and had recognized the identical, horrifying pattern beginning to emerge in Elena's behavior. "I prepared the medicines Mr. Hartwell gave to both his wives," Sarah confessed, her voice thick with years of suppressed guilt and fear. "He told me they were treatments prescribed by Dr. Henley, but I noticed they came from unmarked bottles that arrived through private correspondence. When I asked about them, Mr. Hartwell said they were experimental remedies from European physicians that weren't available through local apothecaries." Sarah's detailed account revealed the methodical, patient nature of Jeremiah's deception. She described how he had gradually increased the dosages of the mysterious compounds, timing the administration to coincide with periods when the wives spent extended time in the master bedroom. She had observed both women's growing fixation with mirrors, their increasing isolation from friends and family, and their progressive, heartbreaking inability to distinguish between reality and hallucination. "The most terrible part," Sarah continued, tears streaming down her face, "was watching them try to tell people what they were experiencing, only to have everyone dismiss their words as madness. Mrs. Margaret kept insisting that someone was watching her through the walls, that her food tasted strange, that the mirrors showed her things that couldn't possibly be real. Everyone said it was nervous hysteria. But I knew something was terribly wrong when Mrs. Elena began describing exactly the same experiences." Dr. Henley's professional reputation hung in the balance as the full scope of his unwitting participation in Jeremiah's monstrous scheme became clear. The innocent medicines he had prescribed for both women's headaches and nervous conditions had been replaced with Jeremiah's poisonous compounds, administered under the guise of legitimate medical treatment. His very diagnosis of mental illness had provided the perfect cover for systematic poisoning, allowing Jeremiah to destroy his wife's credibility while maintaining his own public reputation as a caring, tragic husband dealing with family tragedy. "I need to examine Mrs. Elena immediately," Dr. Henley announced, his professional composure finally cracking under the immense weight of his realization. "If she has been subjected to chronic poisoning with hallucinogenic compounds, there may be physical evidence that could support these allegations. More importantly, we need to begin treatments to counteract any substances still in her system." But even as the evidence mounted against him, Jeremiah Hartwell demonstrated the calculating intelligence that had made him so successful in business and espionage. Rather than continuing to deny the accusations, he shifted to what appeared to be a confession, one carefully designed to minimize his legal exposure. "You're correct that I have been conducting surveillance activities from this house," he admitted with calm, chilling deliberation. "The hidden passages were installed by the previous owner, a man with similar business interests, who found them useful for gathering information about potential investors and competitors. When I purchased the property, I simply continued using these facilities because they provided significant advantages in commercial negotiations." Jeremiah's partial confession was expertly crafted to acknowledge the surveillance while vehemently denying the more serious charges of poisoning and conspiracy. He claimed that his wives had discovered the passages independently and had suffered mental breakdowns due to the stress of learning about his ethically questionable business activities. The medicines, he insisted, were legitimate treatments that had unfortunately proven ineffective against their rapidly deteriorating conditions. "Margaret became obsessed with the idea that I was using the passages to spy on her personally," Jeremiah explained, his tone one of reasonable patience. "When in reality, I was simply conducting necessary business intelligence gathering." Her mental condition deteriorated rapidly once she became convinced that every aspect of our marriage was part of some elaborate deception. Elena has unfortunately followed a similar pattern, constructing elaborate conspiracy theories to explain perfectly legitimate business activities. This explanation might have been persuasive under normal circumstances, but the damning presence of Dr. Zimmerman's correspondence made it impossible to sustain. The German physician's letters were too specific, too detailed, and too obviously connected to the symptoms both women had experienced to be dismissed as mere coincidence. Don Carlos had absolutely no intention of allowing Jeremiah to escape justice through legal technicalities. "We'll let the courts determine whether your activities constitute legitimate business or criminal conspiracy," he declared, his voice cold as a tombstone. "In the meantime, Elena will be removed from this house immediately and placed under the care of physicians who haven't been compromised by your deceptions." The confrontation was reaching its conclusion when Elena herself, who had been sitting quietly during much of the discussion, suddenly spoke with a clarity and rationality that had been absent from her voice for months. "The mirror woman isn't gone," she said, her tone perfectly calm and lucid. "She's still here, still trying to warn people about what happens in this house. But I can see her clearly now, without the medicines clouding my vision. She's not a reflection, or a spirit, or a delusion. She's me. The part of me that stayed rational and observant while the rest of my mind was being systematically destroyed." Elena's revelation represented a stunning breakthrough that transformed the entire understanding of her condition. The mirror woman had been her own subconscious mind, fighting valiantly against the debilitating effects of the hallucinogenic drugs by creating an alternate personality that could observe and remember events accurately. The conversations with her reflection had been internal dialogues between the drugged, confused Elena and the rational, hidden Elena who was desperately trying to piece together the truth about her horrifying situation. "I remember everything now," Elena continued, her voice gaining power with every word. "Every conversation I overheard through the passages. Every document I saw when Jeremiah thought I was too disoriented to understand. Every single detail about his business arrangements and his correspondence with Dr. Zimmerman. The mirror woman wasn't giving me information. She was helping me remember information I had gathered myself but couldn't access consciously because of the drugs." The immediate aftermath of Elena's recovery and the discovery of Jeremiah's conspiracy sent shock waves through Millbrook and the broader Pennsylvania business community. Don Carlos wasted no time in presenting the mountain of evidence to county authorities, while Dr. Henley began the process of meticulously documenting Elena's recovery as irrefutable proof that her condition had been artificially induced. Within days of discontinuing Jeremiah's medicines, Elena's symptoms began to disappear rapidly. Her obsession with mirrors faded as her natural mental clarity returned, and her ability to distinguish between drug-induced hallucinations and reality was fully restored. Most significantly, her detailed memory of the information she had gathered during her months of impaired consciousness provided investigators with a comprehensive and devastating picture of Jeremiah's criminal network. The legal proceedings that followed revealed the true, sickening scope of what prosecutors termed the Hartwell conspiracy. Evidence gathered from the mansion's hidden compartments documented years of surveillance, blackmail, and information trafficking that had corrupted business and political dealings throughout western Pennsylvania. Jeremiah's clients had included corrupt judges, dishonest politicians, and unscrupulous businessmen who had paid him substantial sums for compromising information about their rivals and opponents. Margaret Hartwell's tragic fate took on a new, heartbreaking meaning as investigators exhumed her body and conducted post-mortem examinations using the most advanced forensic techniques available in 1835. Traces of mercury and other toxic compounds found in her remains confirmed that she had died not from mental illness, but from the cumulative, agonizing effects of systematic poisoning. Her death was officially reclassified from natural causes to homicide, making Jeremiah liable for murder charges in addition to conspiracy and fraud. The Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane, where Margaret had spent her final, tortured years, cooperated fully with the investigation by providing detailed records of her condition and treatment. These documents heartbreakingly revealed that Margaret had maintained periods of lucidity throughout her confinement, during which she had consistently and desperately claimed that her husband was poisoning women to hide his criminal activities. Her statements, previously dismissed as the ravings of a mad woman, were now recognized as the accurate, terrifying testimony from a victim of deliberate chemical torture. Sarah Quinn's brave decision to testify against her employer proved crucial to the prosecution's case. Her detailed knowledge of the household's daily operations, combined with her first-hand observations of both wives' deterioration, provided investigators with a timeline that correlated perfectly with the administration of Dr. Zimmerman's experimental compounds. Her testimony also revealed the existence of other potential victims, houseguests and business associates who had reported strange symptoms after visiting the Hartwell mansion. Dr. Zimmerman himself was located in Philadelphia, where he had been conducting similar experiments on patients at a private asylum. His arrest led to the discovery of a broader network of physicians and businessmen who had been using medical treatments as weapons against inconvenient women throughout Pennsylvania and neighboring states. The scandal, dubbed the poisoning conspiracy by newspapers, eventually implicated dozens of prominent men who had used similar tactics to silence wives, daughters, and female business associates who threatened their interests. Jeremiah Hartwell's trial became one of the most sensational criminal proceedings in Pennsylvania history. The prosecution's case was made ironclad by Elena's lucid, powerful testimony about her experiences, Sarah Quinn's detailed account of the household's dark operations, and the extensive documentary evidence found in the mansion's hidden compartments. Most damaging of all was Dr. Zimmerman's decision to cooperate with authorities in exchange for reduced charges, providing chilling expert testimony about the effects of the compounds used to poison both wives. The defense attempted to portray Jeremiah as a victim of circumstances, a man manipulated by Dr. Zimmerman and other conspirators. This strategy collapsed when prosecutors presented evidence showing that Jeremiah had initiated contact with Dr. Zimmerman and had specifically requested treatments that would produce symptoms of insanity while leaving victims physically functional. The jury's verdict was unanimous: guilty on all charges, including murder in the first degree for Margaret's death, attempted murder for Elena's poisoning, and multiple counts of conspiracy, fraud, and extortion. The judge's sentence reflected the depravity of the crimes: death by hanging, to be carried out within 30 days. Elena's recovery was complete by the time of Jeremiah's execution in December 1835. She returned to her father's household in Pittsburgh, where she gradually resumed a normal life and eventually remarried. She lived a long and healthy life, but she never spoke publicly about her experiences in the Hartwell mansion beyond her courageous testimony at the trial. The Hartwell mansion itself became an infamous symbol of the darker aspects of America's industrial development and the profound vulnerability of women in a society that too readily dismissed their concerns as hysteria or madness. The building was sold to satisfy Jeremiah's debts and was eventually converted into a boarding house. The hidden passages were sealed, the mirrors were removed, and the master bedroom was divided into smaller, anonymous rooms to erase its association with the tragic events. But the legacy of the Hartwell conspiracy extended far beyond the fate of one criminal and his victims. The case led to significant reforms in Pennsylvania's laws regarding the commitment of the mentally ill, requiring independent medical evaluations and stricter oversight of private asylums. It sparked a broader, necessary conversation about the use of medical treatments as tools of oppression and the need for better protection of women's legal rights. Dr. Henley, devastated by his unwitting participation in the poisoning scheme, devoted the remainder of his career to studying the effects of toxic compounds on mental health, contributing to the development of more sophisticated forensic techniques. He became a fierce advocate for women's medical rights, arguing that female patients deserve the same quality of care and respect accorded to men. The discovery of Margaret and Elena's true fate raised disturbing questions about how many other women across America might have suffered similar treatment at the hands of powerful men who found it convenient to have them declared insane. The case highlighted the critical importance of believing women who report unusual or disturbing experiences, even when their accounts seem improbable. Margaret and Elena's insistence that they were being watched, drugged, and manipulated had been dismissed as symptoms of madness, when in fact they were accurate descriptions of the crimes being committed against them. Today, the site of the original Hartwell mansion is occupied by a small park in what is now the Pittsburgh metropolitan area. A historical marker, installed in 1985 on the 150th anniversary of Jeremiah's execution, commemorates the victims of the poisoning conspiracy. Its inscription reads simply, "In memory of Margaret Dunlap Hartwell, Elena Rodriguez Hartwell, and all victims of medical abuse." Their courage in seeking truth despite overwhelming obstacles helped establish important legal protections that continue to safeguard patients' rights today. This mystery shows us how easily the vulnerable can be victimized by those in positions of trust and authority, and how crucial it is to listen carefully when someone reports that their reality doesn't match what others expect them to experience. What do you think of this story? Do you believe everything was revealed? Or might there have been other victims whose stories were never uncovered? Leave your comment below. If you enjoyed this tale and want more horror stories like this, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share with someone who loves mysteries. We'll see you in the next video.